Hello and welcome to Postgres FM, a weekly show about all things PostgreSQL. I am Michael, founder of PG Mustard. This is Nikolay, founder of Postgres AI. Hello, Nikolay.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Let's talk about some crazy stuff.
I chose the topic this week and it was a listener suggestion. It's Postgres Gotchas. And we've had a short discussion before this call about what we should even count as gotchas. So how do you define it? What do you think of when you hear Postgres Gotcha?
Well, if you, for example, run, select 5/2, what will you get?
Is this like data type casting?
Right. Well, it's not Postgres related. I think it's SQL related, but still, what do you expect to get? Normal person would expect 2.5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you will get, and I just double checked because I always, I'm always like thinking, am I right? So you're getting 2, so 5.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I actually thought it was going to be 3. Whoops. So it's flawed.
Okay, we probably have 2 things to discuss here. First is, of course, integer and integer, right? The result should be integer, so there's no decimal, there's no point here, there's no dot. And but 2 or 3, rounding or flooring, right?
Yeah, because rounding conventions, at least where I grew up, we generally round up from 0.5, but clearly not here. Anyway, I like this definition, which is something where you may expect one outcome, but a different outcome happens. That's like
unexpected behavior, basically, in other words, right?
Yeah, especially unexpected if you haven't read the documentation.
Not sometimes documentation also wrong or misleading, or sometimes it's just confusing.
Yeah, fair enough. I just wanted an excuse to list a few things that are made very clear in the documentation, but I know people get confused by it because often they don't read that.
I'm curious. I actually found a good example, right? It's like probably a gotcha of SQL, not Postgres, because I think it's maybe defined by standard, and this is super basic. But I'm wondering why indeed it's 2, not 3. Because if you, for example, to double check. Of course, I checked floor and round functions, and of course, as expected, I converted 5 to numeric, or just
like
to
cast with the colon.
Right. So the result is also numeric, and then we have, of course, 2.5000. Okay. So, but then I checked floor gives me 2, round gives me 3 as expected, because 2.5 means if you're rounding according to there are names for these rules. I don't remember, right? But usually 5 you go up, 4 you go down, right? And it gives 3. Round gives 3. But I was thinking, okay, why 5/2 integer and integer gives 2 or not 3? Maybe because it uses floor. We could check source code, of course, but next thing I checked is final thing I checked. 5 converted to numeric /2 gives you 2.5, and then you convert back to int, right? Again, double colon int. It gives 3.
Amazing.
So how come we have 2 if we don't use explicit type conversion at all? Any ideas? It was a good gotcha to find. I know I always knew that it's 2 because I demonstrated. I just didn't think why. Now I think why. And I have questions. Maybe there is some good explanation, simple, but I can see easily that it can be gotcha, right? It can be considered gotcha. And let's agree on one more thing. We don't talk about nulls today.
I actually did have them on my list, but not to go into detail.
We had a whole episode, and this whole episode is telling nulls are surrounded by gotchas, both standard defined, standard produced, and global SQL gotchas and local Postgres related gotchas as well. For example, when you go to arrays, right? Let's just exclude it because it's a whole massive area.
I think that's very sensible. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I'll link it up in the show notes.
Yeah, consider it as to be fully included here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's maybe switch to your ideas. I know you have a list. Pull something from it.
Yeah, I've got a few. I've got a few that I wanted to make sure we mentioned. I'm going to start with some ones that I consider more beginner level gotchas, and then maybe we can work our way up a little bit. The first one I had is one I see all the time in kind of forums, every now and again on Reddit, quite a few times in like the Postgres Slack, on a few mailing lists. People getting confused or annoyed when they name objects in Postgres and they use mixed case. So maybe camel case or some way of naming a table, like for example, like a 2-worded name and using capital letters for the 2 names and no space in between them, that kind of thing. And then realizing the table is not called that behind the scenes and it's all lowercased. And if they've used an ORM or something to name these, the ORM often puts quotes around those case names, so then they become cased in the database. So I think this whole area is like a one big gotcha for beginners. And the people who set up the schema in the first place, if they do something like this, if they don't just use lowercase object names, can really make life a bit painful for everybody that comes after them, having to double quote everything.
Yeah, especially Java people like it because.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I noticed. I like usually if we have a new customer and we start discussing their database, we see some camel style cased table names, and I think I'm already thinking, are you Java guys? Yeah, they are. Usually, not always, but usually so. And my previous startup was using it, camel style, like and we just decided to keep it as is because it was inherited from some. I think it was in MySQL originally. Like we started very lean, so we borrowed some schema from some open source project, and it had it. And I just, knowing this very well, I still decided to keep it. But the problem with double quotes is not like it's not a big deal. But when you know what comes with quotes usually, right? Backslashes.
Oh, having to escape them.
Yeah, and you cannot escape from this. You need to use it to escape, right? I mean, and backslashes. If you have automation in many languages, like sometimes it's nightmare. Like we have right now, we have an ongoing problem with backslashes and escaping of quotes and double quotes in our AI system. It's a combination of Python and Bash actually. And yeah, it drives us crazy sometimes. We solved some problems, but not all of them still. And when AI needs to talk about your table names and you give the schema with like double quotes, and then you want to experiment in DB Lab to find some like plans or something, it sometimes just is broken just because of problems with backslashes and passing these pieces between different components. Yeah, it's not. I would prefer keeping everything lowercase. That's it in Postgres, right? Snake style, right? Or
yeah.
And that's it, and just forget about it, right?
Yeah, please, people, please.
I wanted to mention the list of gotchas I saw. Actually, this is as we discussed right before this recording. I didn't know the word gotcha until 2006 or 2007, and this is exactly when this list was published. And I remember we had 2 lists, one for Postgres and one for MySQL. For MySQL, it's outside of scope, right? Again, even more than NAS. But this list, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm very. First of all, it survived how many years? Like it's insane. 18, 17 years. Wow! And I'm looking at this. This is quite short list at sqlinfo.de, right? And almost everything is crossed out. Good.
Yeah, I've never seen this page before. This is really cool. And yeah, maybe more than half of them have been crossed out.
Yeah, count starts very slow. Let's just laugh at it. Yeah.
Well, and we had an episode on that, right?
I think we should. Unicode means UTF-8 left as well. Well, yeah. Yeah, constraint checking, it's interesting, but maybe let's not dive into it. And finally, I wanted to highlight what else left. Only 4 items. So 5, okay, 5. But one of them is upgrade-related stuff. And I was discussing on Twitter, on X, I was discussing this topic over the last few days. I just checked documentation of 3 major managed Postgres providers. So RDS, Cloud SQL, and Azure Postgres, and I saw that all of them say, okay, upgrade is done, major upgrade. Now it's time, don't forget, now it's time to run analyze. And they say analyze, they give you a snippet, analyze semicolon, which means it's single-threaded as well, right? First of all, they don't include it, none of them include it into automation. But we don't talk about managed Postgres providers today, we talk about Postgres. My question is, why PG upgrade does not include, it prints only some text in the end, but who reads the text? Many people will say, for those who don't read, it's on their shoulders, it's their problem. But I cannot agree with it. Right?
I could even make a case for the gotcha here is that statistics are not preserved on major upgrade.
Yes.
I think if you asked somebody that didn't know whether they would expect the statistics to be wiped or to be preserved, somebody that maybe doesn't understand how difficult it might be, or the catalog, the reasons why they're not preserved, you'd be forgiven to think in the most advanced open source database that might happen, even though it's complicated. And I think there has been some work.
Everyone agrees on it, just not solved.
Yeah, so I think that's the main gotcha. And then obviously the solution at the moment is we need to run analyze.
Yeah, let's unwrap a little bit. Yeah. So we talk about statistics, which is required for planner to make right decisions. If database is not trivial, containing 100 rows in each table, that's it. If it's not trivial, we need statistics. Without statistics, database is slow. And what happens in zillion cases, it happens. It's hard to estimate, but when I posted this tweet, I received several replies immediately that we got bitten by this badly. Some person wrote, we learned this hard way, obviously, and this is what happens all the time. And recently, during summer, we also failed to help a customer with it. We discussed major upgrades, but from now on, I'm pointing out, don't forget. But we discussed upgrades, we discussed some complicated stuff, and then they went to upgrade, and next Monday they say, today they are in Europe, so in the morning it was already by the evening in Europe, and they say we had nasty database incidents today because guess what? We forgot to run analyze. And this is huge gotcha, not only by managed services, and they could do it, but I don't care too much about them. This is gotcha of PG upgrade. I think it's very well understood. There is work in progress for export and import of statistics, quite long thread in Hackers already, and commit fast entry. It's still not done, but there is hope. There is one more thing here. So I think PG upgrade definitely should have it, and also PG restore, but let's return to it in a few minutes. So when someone says you need to recalculate statistics yourself after upgrade, PG upgrade, I definitely I would expect PG upgrade to do this for sure. But okay, it just prints do it. PG upgrade prints vacuum DB, I think, no, or in stages, or vacuum DB in stages. It has this vacuum DB analyze only in stages, 2 options. Analyze only means no vacuum and just analyze. In stages means first it gets only 1 bucket for each table, for each column actually, right? And then some midway until and then default statistics target or individual column based setting for each column, right? Default statistics target by default is 100 buckets. This is what defines how much Postgres planner will know about distribution in each column, right? And it can be adjusted globally or for individual columns. But
almost like a sample size, like the sample
yeah.
size increases of what it samples.
Yeah, and I quickly realized this is not what you want to do in OLTP, because in OLTP you either include analyze inside maintenance window. In this case, there is no sense to run it 3 times, or you just or that's it. There is only option actually. Like I don't trust in opening gates with weak statistics. It will be like unpredictable again incident. Yeah.
Yeah, risky. But this feels like a topic that might be worth a deeper dive.
Right. I just wanted to point out that when people say analyze, and it's just one threaded, right? And you expect Postgres has a lot of parallelism implemented, but when you run analyze, it's always single threaded. This is unexpected as well, right?
Good one. Yeah, I like that.
It's kind of gotcha inside gotcha. We have matryoshka style gotcha here, right? Russian doll style.
What do you recommend doing? Like just kicking off a bunch of queries, analyze like per table name.
I recommend
per
vacuum
partition.
I recommend vacuum DB.
Nice. Okay.
And speed up and go full speed inside maintenance window. Again, it's a different story. But this vacuum DB, it has dash hyphen
J?
hyphen jobs or J. Yeah, hyphen J.
Yeah.
You can define, and usually we take as many courses we have on the server, and go full speed inside maintenance window to achieve. Like analyze should be quite fast if you don't do vacuum. There is also gotcha a little bit in vacuum DB options, because vacuum DB's hyphen analyze will also do vacuum. So there is
can
also
you do analyze only, or
there is analyze only. Yeah. But it's easy to overlook. There is one more gotcha here inside all this. When people go with manual single-threaded analyze, or maybe multi-threaded but just explicit analyze, it was interesting. I was thinking, someone said analyze can be super expensive. I agree, but even if it's like if default statistics target is 1,000, it's not that expensive. But back to this, can we throttle it? For example, you want it to go very slow, because AutoVacuum it doesn't have actually
cost delay or something.
Yes, there is vacuum cost delay and vacuum cost limit, and by default it's off, because I think cost limit is 0, meaning that it's not checked at all. Not cost limit, cost delay is 0, like no check. But AutoVacuum has mirrored pair of these settings. It's throttled. Long story short, AutoVacuum is throttled usually, and we actually usually fight with our customers a little bit to increase this, make it even more aggressive. And managed providers already did part of that job, which is good. But if we run it manually, it's not throttled. It will go full speed. I doubt you will need to throttle it, but some people won't. Okay, let's throttle it. Question: how? We have vacuum limit, vacuum cost limit, vacuum cost delay. We can set vacuum cost delay from default 0 to some point, but is it about analyze, or it's only about vacuum? Based on just the naming, it's not about analyze. It's about vacuum only, right?
That would be my guess, but by the line of your questioning, I'm guessing it does affect analyze.
Right. I go to documentation and I see vacuum cost limit, vacuum cost delay, I think, and I see description. They talk only about vacuum. They don't talk about analyze. So I make conclusion it's only about vacuum. But some part of my very long-term memory tells me, is it really so? And then Sadek Dusti, who helped me a lot with, and still helping sometimes when I write it, how-tos and reviews, how-tos, I'm very thankful for that. I have already 94 how-tos. So I wrote how to analyze. And right now I need to add this. Vacuum cost limit, vacuum cost delay, they affect analyze. If you scroll up to the beginning of section, you will see that it talks about both vacuum and analyze. And we also, using AI, I checked source code and quickly found that there is function called vacuum exec, which works with both vacuum and analyze. And this confusion comes from source code, propagates to documentation, and then to our heads, right? This is gotcha as well. So you can use vacuum cost limit, vacuum cost delay to throttle analyze, although I usually don't do it because I think we need to go full speed. Yeah.
And in the one example we're talking about here, we want to go faster, not slower. Yeah.
Right. So,
Cool.
but it's interesting, right? So there is some small confusion. I think there are many such confusions, and they are slowly fixed. They are slowly being fixed.
Great example of one where the documentation wasn't helpful in avoiding that one. So yeah, nice. I've got a few more like beginner friendly ones that maybe we could rattle through. I'm not even sure you'd consider them all gotchas, but one relates to this a little bit, and that's conservative defaults in a lot of places. I think that not only catches... Well, you don't think it's a gotcha? Or
I think we should exclude this on the same like we're using the same approach as now because it's a huge bag of yeah.
Cool. And then another one that I see catch out, well, a couple that I see catch out beginners. Again, maybe this is another huge topic, but access exclusive locks on like just basically DDL blocking selects, like blocking inserts and like, you know, all sorts of people getting... I think people don't realize, because if they're working on small databases at first, they start to grow in confidence of how to do things, and then it only catches them out, you know, once the startup's got really successful and the table's much bigger, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, there is some memes with like Gauss distribution, or how it's called, right? Gaussian distribution. And first, I think schema changes are painful. In the like schema changes are super painful. They require expertise at like beginner, right? Then in the middle, you can imagine, Postgres has transactional DDL. Everything is fine. We just need to wrap everything into one transaction and rely on Postgres' great capabilities of transactional DDL.
Yeah. Or just concurrently and think, do everything concurrently.
Or MVCC works well. It doesn't block selects. Selects are always working. You can have a lot of like exciting stuff in the middle. And then on the right, you say Postgres Postgres has transactional DDL, but you cannot use it.
Well, on the right, it has to be the same as the left, doesn't it? Schema changes are painful.
Yes, they are painful. Transactional DDL cannot be used in many cases, and you can shoot your feed very well many times. So this is it, I think, and a lot of gotchas there.
Another one that's not necessarily... I'm not sure if this counts as a gotcha. I'd be interested in your opinion, but I have seen it catch people out, and I guess it's a little bit of a foot gun, and that's, you know, you see the memes about this as well, actually. Delete or update without a where clause, and then just suddenly seeing, you know, instead of 5 rows updated...
Stuff. It's not Postgres.
But if you think, like, it's not Postgres... Why do you say it's not Postgres out of interest?
Because SQL standard defines this, and any relational database which follows SQL standard to some extent has it.
Yeah, but like the clients, I've seen clients catch these, like catches, but the ones that ship, well, the P-SQL doesn't. So I don't think it's unreasonable that Postgres does it this way, but I've definitely seen it catch people out.
I agree. Blame SQL standard, and there is extension to forbid it. And it was maybe one of the very first hacking sessions with Andrei. We implemented some GUC setting in Postgres, which would allow administrators to, I don't think error warning, like completely forbid or just warn. I don't remember. I think error should be here. But it was not accepted, of course, because I think it was discussed many times. And I mean, it's possible. And right now, as I see, I think Postgres does it, right? Postgres.
Does it?
A lot. So it's usually right now it's sold if there is some middleware, it's sold there. So if you develop API using Postgres, for example, I think maybe I'm mistaken, but I think there is a way. If there is no way, it's a good idea to implement actually.
That would be, yeah.
So if in URL of your HTTP request of RESTful API there is a command to run delete without any filters, I think it will not do it. It will not go to Postgres with it. So, nice. But inside database, I don't think it's going to change, right? We tried actually. So
yes, with you tried. What do you mean you tried? with the
Again,
patch?
we had a session. Yeah, we had a patch. Andrei submitted it, but it was a small discussion, and chances are close to zero that it will be successful.
Patch in P-SQL or somewhere else? Or like
No, not in P-SQL. We wanted to have a Postgres setting, GFC
wow.
setting, to just allow administrators to forbid unspecified I don't remember how we called it, maybe unspecified delete and update, when you don't have the where clause at all. Just like,
cool.
don't do it. There's truncate for if you want to delete, right? An update of whole table, I don't know, yeah. But again, like right now it's in middleware, usually sold in middleware. You can have triggers or something to protect yourself if you want. Or this extension, if you're on self-managed Postgres, there is some extension for it. I wanted to mention one thing step back to DDL. My favorite example is like, do you think just adding a column, you cannot put your traffic down or your database down? You can. If it cannot acquire log, it starts blocking all queries to this table, even selects. Like I cannot acquire log, everyone else can wait, right? Even selects who come with access share log, like don't touch this. That's it. So, and that's not good, right? And this is super unexpected and super big surprise.
Yeah, especially because if you could even test that, right? Like you could even make a fork of production or clone it, run that on its own in isolation where there is no lock, and it runs super fast. So you think this is safe, but even though it was super fast, it does require that heavy lock, and that blocks everything else. Definitely a gotcha. That's a great one.
Yeah. And there are many others in the area of DDL, but this I find like affecting every single project which had like at least some growth, like I don't know, like to 1,000 TPS, and it's already noticeable. It's not noticeable in tiny projects.
Yeah. Which I think is kind of part of the problem, right? Or like at least makes it worse, because anybody that gains experience on smaller projects as they grow gets some confidence that these things work or they're fine, and then it changes at some point.
Exactly.
So yeah, you've got a great article on this actually, I think, that I can share about DDL. It's all about DDL changes, I think.
Yeah. This one is definitely included. I think this one has a different blog post about, like I have few about DDLs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else?
Well, in that area of making big changes, partly by mistake, like the delete or update without where, do you think people would expect to be able to undo something? I'm not thinking just from like people with experience of relational databases, but the fact that if you do something like that by mistake, that you have to go to your backups to get that data back. If I was in my early 20s or just out, if I was in my teens, all other software I use has the ability to undo something if I do it by mistake. So it does feel slightly unexpected, potentially, if I've grown up in that world, that I can make one mistake and not be able to undo it.
In what database you can? I mean, of course there are like
I don't know.
Time travel, or if branching is supported, you can, but it's still like not super simple, right? Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are several projects which try to solve this problem, and I mean, the specific databases supporting branching, for example, or even other. I think, have you heard about this new company where Michael Stonebreaker is participating? DBOps,
I heard of it. I don't know much about it.
DBOps, or how's it called? I don't remember already. Not DBOps, DBOS, right?
Yes.
So I wonder if this feature will be inside it. I don't know. Like for me, it's not expected. I cannot name this gotcha because it's a hard problem, and we didn't get used to it to having it because like it's rare. But maybe like if we go to young people minds.
Yeah.
There are many gotchas for them, right? Oh, this is working not as I expected. So naming is hard just because it should avoid gotchas. If you chose some name, you should think about other people and think like to be very predictable. This is the art of naming. And we just discussed this vacuum cost limit affecting analyze. So yeah, and in young minds, Gotchas because Gotchas world is much bigger because they don't understand the logic in many places, how it's like common practice in many places, right? And that's why many more unexpected situations.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. By the way, if you run pgdump on a very large database, like one table after another, and then we deal with snapshot, right? With snapshot, it's a repeatable read and snapshot, and even if you use multiple workers for pgdump, they are synchronized reading from the same snapshot. But what if some table is dropped? Will it be present in this table? I'm not sure actually. I just think there is a gotcha here.
So.
If during dump there are some schema changes, right? Can we have some inconsistency in backups? I not in backups, in dumps. By the way, this this confusion was resolved recently, right? We didn't mention it in the previous discussions of confusions, but the pgdump page is not saying it's for dumps or pgdump page is not saying that it's for backups anymore. So dumps are not backups. So schema changes.
That's coming. In 18.
Yeah, in the 18. Okay. We will discuss this additionally. Okay, but this is a big confusion when documentation says pgdump is a backup tool. It's still so even in 16. And now we have all rights to say it's like all people who said pgdump is not a backup tool. You're right, because finally in 18 it's already changed. I think it won't be reverted. I hope so. This patch.
I doubt it. Yeah.
But back to our topic, pgdump can be expected to be tool for backups just because of documentation. Then you have quite painful process of realizing it's very bad for backups. So it's a gotcha, which is already fixed in the future in Postgres 18, right? And if we, in this area, pg restore doesn't run analyze, which hurts every second attempt to restore big database, even with experienced people like I am. Because again, it's like with pg upgrade, we discussed it. pg restore, you restored huge dump, you start working with it, but it's slow, and in plans you see where you expect simple index scan, you see bitmap scans, bitmap index, bitmap heap scan, because there is no vacuum, there is no analyze. It also should run on a vacuum to collect visibility maps.
Or it might not be unreasonable to think that maybe backups would include the statistics and then restore would restore the statistics.
Physical backups, I agree. Logical backups, I disagree. You don't include indexes, which is derivative from data itself. Statistics is also derivative of data. So you include description, like create index. There should be some word like analyze in the end. I wanted to say create statistics, but there is analyze already. This such word. Why restore? And restore could run it if we use pg restore -j 8, for example, 8 parallel jobs. In this case, why like we are not recalculating statistics? And right now we deal with like everyone who deals with some automation. For example, for DB Lab engine, we need it when provisioning is logical, so it's dump restore, and we need to move as fast as possible, multiple jobs, multiple workers for dump, multiple workers for pg restore, and then of course vacuum DB, in this case -analyze, so to have vacuum as well, and also -j. But people forget about this, and forgetting means like you expect it will be fine, but if you don't run analyze yourself, ideally in multiple threads and multiple workers, using multiple workers. In this case, performance will be very bad, and people start thinking, oh, Postgres is slow. Have you heard about this? Like, I restore from dump, and it's slow.
I have to admit, I haven't heard that complaint, no.
Okay, I'm hearing it. and I'm doing it myself almost 20 years. I know about
no,
this.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just haven't, maybe it's just not the category of problem. Maybe what happens when people experience that is they don't post online, or either they don't notice or they don't post, they just go try something else.
Yeah, it's not a big deal if you restore and it's working, and then like you want to deal with it one day later, because likely auto vacuum will do it. But if you expect to run fast queries immediately after restoration from a dump, I'm talking about something which is 100% very well known to everyone who is at least a little bit experienced. But it doesn't make it non-gotcha. It's still gotcha.
Yeah.
That page restore doesn't calculate statistics and doesn't run vacuum.
Yeah. And it's quite remarkable. I know we could go on with this list for quite a while, and there's like varying levels of gotchas. But I like the list you sent me, how short and brief it is, and I really think for many other databases it would be a much longer list. I listened to you listening to your experience of a couple of days of trying to use MySQL at the beginning, and recently I was listening to an interview with Tom Lane, and he mentioned like checking out MySQL at the beginning and not liking a few things about it, and that feels like a really common experience. And having worked with commercial databases like SQL Server and Oracle, that often move much faster in terms of adding features that enterprise clients really want, there's just so many more gotchas in that result from processes like that. So I imagine, I could be wrong,
I think Postgres has lots of gotchas, lots of them.
But compared to other relational databases,
yeah, it's a complex system. All complex systems have a lot of gotchas. Some of them are just very like niche, very like narrow and deep and so on. Some of them are like nobody knows about them. For example, select into. This is what you can write inside PLPGSQL, right? So you write a function or trigger, and you write select into some variable, blah blah blah, and then you think, okay, this select is like, maybe it's complex select actually, subselects or I don't know, joins and so on. But in the end, you have a scalar or something, and you select into a variable inside PLPGSQL. And then you think, I want to understand the plan, or I want to just run it and try to troubleshoot. And you put it to pSQL. What will happen? If you put select into blah, 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 and then some regular select from, where, order by, you name it.
Just an error?
No.
What happens?
It will create a table.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because select into is one of it's create table. This I think just should be removed, like completely removed, deprecated. Select into creating a table. It's a DDL. This is definitely a gotcha for everyone.
Yes, imagine all those parsers that just I know this is flawed for multiple reasons, but that look at any query that starts with select and like, oh, it's a read query.
Well, yeah. Usually we say select for update is blocking some, like acquiring a heavy lock, blocking all writes. Yes, blocking all writes on these rows, right? Particular rows, not the whole table. But select can create a table. And we have create table as select already, and this is what all people use, I think, who need it. So select into probably just some very old stuff that could be potentially removed, I think.
If it's not in the SQL standard.
Ooh, it's a good point.
Yeah.
If it is, no chances, right?
Yeah, well, probably not, no. Cool. Anything else you wanted to make sure we covered?
Maybe it's enough. I think we covered less than 1% of what we could. This is my feeling. What do you think?
Well, it depends what you count as gotchas and how niche you're willing to go. It turns out the more you know, the more gotchas you know about, I guess.
So I could not resist, and I checked documentation. SQL standard uses select into to represent selecting values into a scalar variable of a host
Oh, okay.
program rather than creating a new table. It's definitely Postgresism, and I think it should be removed.
Okay, cool. Good one.
Yeah. Good. Okay, good chat. Maybe some kind of entertaining more than useful, but I enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to send us any more that you've got or that you've seen.
Maybe we should think about specific areas like we did for null, and maybe we should explore some areas from this perspective, what can be unexpected.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Nikolay. Catch you next week.
You too. Bye.